He went out to the lobby.
Okay, this time I'd like to bring the July 16th, 2020 meeting of the Clearlake City Council to order at 6:01 PM. Madam Clerk, I have the call the roll.
Councilmember Counc,
Here.
Councilmember Overton. Here. Vice Mayor Sutton,
Here.
and Mayor Kramer.
Here.
And Councilmember Harris is absent.
And we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Slotin, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll remain standing, Mr. Jones, could you do the invocation, please?
Happy to. Our kind Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be here this evening. We're grateful for our community and the opportunity to serve this great community. We ask for a blessing upon it. We pray for health, for strength, especially in this difficult time. We pray for all our government and medical, other leaders and providers, that they can have the strength and the knowledge to know how to serve us. Pray for our economy to be restored. We pray particularly for the council members here tonight and for staff to make wise decisions for the community. Bless them in their efforts to have the benefit of the community in mind and to make decisions that will help the community at large. And this we pray in the name of our Savior Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, meeting procedures. All items on the agenda will be open to public comment before final action is taken. Citizens wishing to introduce written material into the record at the public meeting on an item are requested to provide a copy of written material to the city clerk prior to the meeting date so that the material may be distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. Speakers must restrict comments to the item as it appears on the agenda and stay within a 3-minute time limit as directed by the clock up to my right. I have the discretion of limiting the total discussion time for an item. All right, adoption of the agenda. Mr. City Manager, have there been any modifications?
One change, item number 12 is listed as a public hearing, but it's not really required to be a public hearing. So we're recommending moving that in the order to right before item number 15.
Moving item 12 to after item 14.
Yes.
All right.
Other than that, no changes.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Mr. Jones, do you have announcements of actions from closed session?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I wanted to report that there was a motion by Councilmember Purdock to initiate litigation by entering into a joint prosecution agreement with the law firm of Barron & Budd regarding a lawsuit against certain opioid manufacturers, distributors, and sellers for liabilities arising from the manufacture, promotion, distribution, and sale of opioid drugs and substances. That motion was seconded by Councilmember Overton, and the vote was 4-0 with Councilmember Harris was absent. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, we'll move on to presentations. The first will be our Adoptable Dogs. Are you going to do a report first, Lieutenant Hobbs, or are we going to do the?
Right, you can do the dog first, and that we can get the dog out.
Okay, Matthew, can you bring your?
Good evening, everyone. This is Wilbur. He's a year and a half old about. He's a male pit bull mix. He's not neutered yet, but he has an appointment next week. He's current on vaccinations. He does have a microchip, and he's good with other dogs. He likes to play, and he likes to go running. If anyone is interested, for further information, you could contact Clearlake Animal Shelter at 707-273-9440. And if you want to see Wilbur in person, you can visit the animal shelter at 6820 Old Highway 53, Monday through Friday from 12 to 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. Before we go on to your report, Lieutenant Hobbs, should we adopt the agenda? I neglected to do that.
Yeah, we didn't have a motion or a second to adopt.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the changes suggested by the city manager.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Purdock and a second by Vice Mayor Slotin to adopt the agenda as modified. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now let's move on to,
Good evening, council members. So a little update on animal control as of today. So far this year, we've taken 240 dogs into the shelter. 143 have gone to rescues. 46 have been returned to their owners. 36 were adopted. 15 were euthanized. So we're up about 0.5% from the meeting last month. We're still doing really good. We're at 93.8 on the live release rate. So we're, like I said, improving a little bit still, and hopefully we can keep it up in this area throughout the rest of the year. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is there been an increase since the shutdown, shelter in place at all, or is it?
Of euthanasia?
Just in general, how many people, how many dogs
Activity.
you got?
No, we've been getting less animals.
You haven't gotten less
Yeah.
than?
So we're starting to pick back up a little bit now and take more in, but from, April through probably the beginning of June, mid-June, we were taking considerably less in than normal. So,
Great.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, thank you.
thank you, Lieutenant
Mr. Mayor,
Hobbs.
before Lieutenant Hobbs sits down, I was thinking maybe give the council a quick update on the animal shelter project. There's been a little bit of progress out
Absolutely.
there.
yes, so last weekend, well, I think as most of you know already, a month ago, the office building was brought into the new location. That's been in place. This weekend, the shelters, the 2 animal shelters, one with 10 kennels, one with 8 kennels, the exam room, the cat room, the washroom, those arrived from their, where they were built in Pennsylvania. They came on Saturday. So those are in place, and right now the construction company's working on finishing up the landscaping, the sidewalks, all the other construction stuff they have to do to get everything in place. So they look really good, and hopefully they'll get hooked up soon and we can put them to use and get some considerably better conditions for the animals and for the employees to be using. So,
Great, thank
Are
you.
there any questions?
I just wanted to add, they do look good. I stopped over there this week, and just to, not that it's a surprise to the council, but extra special thank you to Lieutenant Hobbs and Chief White, who were there until 1:30 in the morning, I think, on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, making sure everything was done right and they were in place. So it's going to be a big improvement out there, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Lieutenant Chief. All right, now move on to presentation of a certificate of appreciation to the Lakeshore Lions Club for the July 4th celebration and fireworks. I guess I'm supposed. Certificate of recognition to the Lakeshore Lions Club in recognition of the 4th of July celebration. Presented in extreme gratitude of your innovation in planning and success of the July 4th celebration. Your dedication to service and support of our community is to be commended. City Council of the City of Clearlake thanks you for your commitment to our city and its citizens. Dated the 16th day of July 2020 and signed by myself as mayor. And Lee, you took the lead on this, and you did a fantastic job as president of the Lions Club, and Really appreciate all it did, and I think it turned out terrific from everything that I saw. So again, I can't shake your hand, but I can present you this.
All right.
If you'd like to say a couple words,
Yeah, I do.
have at it.
So thank you, council and the city. This was something we felt really strong about that we need to do for our community. We could not have done it without the support of Mayor Kramer, City Manager Flora, Chief of Police, Mike Baker and his staff, Bruno Sabatier, and also Dr. Pace at the county. Everyone was real supportive and wanted to get this done, and we were able to do so. So the Lions appreciate that at the same time. Thank you.
Now's the time for public comment. Public comment will be accepted via email and through the city's town hall portal. If you'd like to comment remotely, please follow the protocols that are listed on our website. There is a person here that would like to speak, however? No? Okay. Is there? All right. Could you please read that, Madam Clerk?
So we have three public comments. I'll read them each. The first is from Anthony Vibenko. It states, "My name is Anthony Vibenko. My family is associated with the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo. I would like to propose a name change of Kelseyville. His heinous acts are nothing to celebrate. We have an opportunity in taking a step forward in correctly honoring one of California's oldest indigenous tribes. I would like to propose Nika Valley, California, or Pomo, California. There is currently a petition that has 1,749 of the 2,000 asked. If the council would like a copy of the website Mr. Vibenko has provided, you can look on our town hall, or I can provide that to you. And he further states, "Thank you so much for your time. All the best, Anthony." So there are two more statements. The next is by Terry Stewart. "First of all, I would like the council and staff to know that I appreciate all your efforts to get the county moving on selling tax defaulted properties. Please continue to press forward on this long neglected issue. Second, I am very sad about spending a lot of money on a beautiful new park that has such a terrible lawn. I don't know if the city has any recourse with the contractor on this or what exactly went wrong, but it's terribly obvious that something went very wrong here, especially considering that we get water for only the cost of pumping it from the lake. Please do something to rectify this ugly situation. Thank you." And last is by S. Walters. "I just wanted to let you know that you are being watched by the citizens of Clearlake. We will not tolerate any illegal activity and/or malfeasance. By virtue of your signatures, you attest to the legal accuracy of any and all proceedings." That finalizes public comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the council or audience requests otherwise, or if staff has requested a change under adoption of the agenda, in which case the item will be removed for separate consideration. Any item so removed will be taken up following the motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay, are there any items that any council member would like to see removed? Okay. Seeing none, we will, I would entertain a motion. Any member of the public? I'm sorry, I probably should ask the public. Are there any member of the public? Is there anybody? Okay, and anyone in the audience that would like to have a consent agenda item moved? Okay, again, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I present the consent agenda as submitted for approval.
I second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Purdock and seconded by Vice Mayor Slotin. All in favor? Signify by saying. Any against? Being none, motion passes. Okay, we'll now move on to our first business item is item number 12. Which has been moved to after 14. So we'll go on to item 13. Public hearing to consider resolution 2020-31, a resolution of the City of Clearlake approving an 18-month street closure of multiple roads as an effort to reduce illegal dumping. Mr. Flora, would you like to introduce that? And there is one person in the audience I know that does want to speak to that. So, Mr. Flora, can you?
Public Works Director Goodman is going to present this item.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So, in an effort to clean up an area that has long had a lot of illegal dumping, decision was made to try and limit access to that area. And we looked at several different ways of limiting that access. And what we came up with was using some concrete blocks and cable to put across the access points and place those in such a way that people who actually are living in the area will not be impacted, but vacant lots that are in the area will be, access will be somewhat restricted. The cable will be attached at one end just with a loop in the cable. The other end will have a lock so that the cable can be removed by police or fire if they need to get into that area, or if we need to get into the area for cleaning. Of course, we've never tried this, so we don't know exactly how it's going to work out. Our hope is that we will at least reduce the amount of illegal dumping that's going on in that area. I believe a map has been provided to you as well. Okay, there you go. And then we included a list of the streets and from the points where we would actually block that off. One of the things, after we figured out what we wanted to do, then we realized that we needed to notify the property owners, and which we did, and we did receive I received 2 phone calls. And I know that one of the people that called me also submitted a statement to be read. Do you want to take care of that now, or do you?
I'll do it for the public hearing.
Okay. And so both people were really just interested in understanding better what was going on. We believe that this is going to be, we're hopeful that it's going to be an effective method of limiting the dumping there. The intent is to first limit the access and then go in and clean it up, and then we'll have a good baseline to see how effective this effort is. Any questions?
Mr. Purdock, go ahead.
Just for the public's record, it looks as though that's the area northwest of Pomo Elementary School.
That is correct.
I don't recall the names of the streets, though. I know we've done a lot of cleanup in that over the years.
Peony and
Is that Peony?
and
Yeah, if you look the very last page of your packet, it describes the streets, but
Leander.
So we could get, put it in the record.
well,
It's Exhibit A on your motion.
we can read it if you would like.
I can read that if you'd like me to.
Just so people watching that may want to make comment, since we have to do the COVID meetings.
Okay, so the road closure list includes Oleander Street from East Lake Drive to Sonoma Avenue, Mint Street from East Lake Drive to Sonoma Avenue, Peony Street from East Lake Drive to Oregon Avenue, from 3283 Tonyo Street south to Oregon Avenue, and Oregon Avenue from Mint Street to Park Street.
Thank you.
There's Councilmember Overton, you have a question?
So how many residents that are living in these areas is this affecting? Because you're telling me you're putting blocks, you're going to put chains up. So is there any I know a couple of these don't have residents in them. Is there any of these that have residents beyond the point that you're closing?
So what we've tried to do is limit access just past where the residents are, where we actually have people. So, and a good example is on the Fourth Street from 3283 Tonyo. That's just below that house to the end of the street. Well, not the end of the street, but south to Oregon Avenue.
So where these points start, where you plan on putting the barriers, there's no housing behind them?
Correct.
Okay. I kind of thought so, but I just wanted to be clear that there wasn't. So, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, go ahead.
No other comments. I just wanted to add, I mean, there's a pretty specific section in, I think it's in the vehicle code that talks about doing this for illegal dumping. And so we had to do the legal notice. As Director Goodman mentioned, the notices were sent out. There was also a letter that he prepared kind of describing the intent of the city behind that. And then the maximum amount of time is 18 months that this can be done. And then, but at that time, if we think it's successful, there's not a lot of other development out there or whatever, then the council could come back at that time and go ahead and renew that for another 18 months. But, and there are some other areas of the city that we might look at doing a very similar thing if this proves to be successful. But, you know, our crew spent a lot of time. We've had organized cleanups out there, but what was it, in the spring,
Right.
The crews spent a lot of time cleaning up all of the city-owned pieces. If you were to go out there now, you would never be able to tell if there's any work done. And so we really need to find a different way to approach this.
Vice Mayor Sloan?
I agree, we need to do this. I mean, it's, you know, I think everybody has been involved in cleanup out there for the last couple of years, and it just doesn't stop. So we need to, if this works, that's a great idea. Let's try it.
Okay, we'll have comments afterward. Are there any other questions for Mr. Goodman? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Seeing none, I'll open the public comment. Mr. Sakeda, is it? Yes, I'm sorry, did I pronounce your name incorrectly?
My name is Augusto Sequeira, and I live and work in Sacramento. And so I'm on this to develop pieces of property in Oleander, 3427, and 2437. And I've been having problems since a couple of years ago. This has somebody's been using my property to grow marijuana legally. I've been cited several times for that reason, which has been looking for a legal assistant to help me. And have been sometimes I have paid, but this time so I had some other things going along with the property, the cleanup and things, because as I have that problem, and these people have been using it. And I received a letter from the office here that it's going to be the access closed to Oleander for other reasons, because the place is being used as a dumping site for junk cars and things, other things in the property. And then so I just may want to make sure what I can do besides the cleaning the property, and how is be allowed to do that, because I've been in contact with the officer, Mr. Lambert, so I recognize it. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And then so it's been cited, so and before I paid some of the fine, but this time, Mr. Lambert helped me also to skip that one for the reasons illegally it's not my fault, and then using the property. But I'm concerned about things going. I got proof to always pay my taxes on time, and see how I can be allowed to dispose the trash over there because it's been, they clean up only the place, use a fence to use it, to plant the marijuana. And then so if, how I can, how far I can go with the process of doing that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to be able to access your property in order to clean it up?
Well, it's, for me, it doesn't matter about the access. I have no concern, any concern about it. But my concern is that if that happens, so everyone have their property there, so it's been pretty dirty in Ambara because they're being used as a disposal things. They have left campers there for the people that were using, watching the job we were doing there, the nasty, and see how I can do, how it affect me, because it looked like it's going to be for a long process, for a long time, to get this thing straight up.
Sounds like this is a way that we're trying to limit dumping out there, illegal dumping, so I think it's a good idea. If you need access to it, I'm sure you can arrange it with city staff.
See, if I find a person here in Clearlake that's going to help me to do it, but if it's is that allowed to burn any, to pick up the trash and do some burning, is that allowed for the county, or what else it can do to comply with the orders, the city orders?
I'm sure if you work with staff on it, you'll be able to get access to clean your property, because that's the whole purpose of this ordinance, in order to limit illegal dumping.
But you can't burn.
Could I ask Mr. Lambert, can you give us some idea on what the status is? He mentioned your name, that you'd been out there.
Yeah, there was someone illegal.
Come up.
I think we might be getting a little off topic on this item, though. Perhaps the gentleman should just connect with Mr. Lambert and try to deal
Well,
with it.
I'd kind of like to hear what Mr. Lambert has to say.
Actually, I had a follow-up, Mr. City Manager, on that, for what the city could do for people that find themselves victimized by this illegal dumping, even though they're being as responsible as they can be. Maybe there might be something the city could do prior to closing off the streets, or extra patrol or something like that, after the street closures.
Mr. Lambert, could you please? Thank you, sir. Also,
Thank you, Mr. Cicada.
So what specifically would you want to know?
what the status is.
So someone, I was out there doing an investigation. There was 2 properties of his where someone was illegally cultivating on. So as property owner, he's issued notice, and it's also posted on the property. It happened last year as well. The plants were gone when we go out there for a follow-up, but the property owner still receives the fines for the property. Once they cleaned up, they still left all the trash and everything else behind, so that's what he's looking into, is trying to get that cleaned up. In the meantime, he had a family emergency, so I issued him an extension to get that part taken care of since the marijuana was already gone. So that's where we're at right now. There's no more fines being issued as of right now. We're in basically an extension for him to get it taken care of.
You have a question, Mr.?
Yes, sir. So I guess that's kind of where I am with the street closures. Last time I was there, there's still a lot of trash out there on the private properties. I know we cleaned up the city properties, but I'm just wondering we'd still need to probably get those properties that have trash on them cleaned up. How do we talk with the property owners to accommodate that, as Mr. Cicada is trying to do? And is there any plan, or can the city maybe assist those property owners to help them get cleaned up? I see them as victims, is what in this, on both sides.
I see it both ways. You're also, as a property owner, responsible for maintaining your property, so.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's something we can discuss at some other point, I guess.
I mean, I think there's always the opportunity to organize another, large cleanup in the area, but
Okay.
first we have to see if we're going to be able to restrict access to it, because at this point, it's really been a waste of effort.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Lambert.
Mr. Cada. Madam Clerk, do you have any other public comment?
There was one comment submitted by Christopher Harris, who has questions and concerns and states, will the garbage be removed from your lots and delinquent lots in the barricaded area before or after barricades, or will it be left there? I noticed that all roads will be blocked off besides Peony. This will allow every person who squats, lives, and dumps in the area to pass me and mine before proceeding into the area, which will cause extreme punitive damages. Why are you not blocking out the red tagged homes and parcels? Why allow them to continue to access their homes via the street Peony? Chris Neely lives on Oleander, but it's in violation many times, so you're going to close his road and leave mine open. Disturbing. I have spent hours, days, and weeks cleaning. I think all roads should be blocked off and owners should be provided keys. Just about 60 days ago, water mains with no meters have been installed, and it is being used by every person living back there. I have installed game camera to view its activity and maintenance. Is there any knowledge of these open water mains? Some have dates as new as 3/2020. I have opened CAD reports, and I was counseled, and it was closed in 10 minutes. Do you plan on taking out the water mains with no meters? According to Golden State, they do not exist. The most disturbing thing is it's a delinquent parcel with a deceased owner.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action. Councilman Overton?
Due to this comment that was just read to us from Christopher Harris, is there a way to contact him to find out about those, if there's water mains that are there that are being used? Mr. Lee?
So I've been working with Keith Ahart at Golden State Water, and there's been so many break-ins to their meters and tampering that they've actually taken the meters out of them. And he did activate one water meter out there with a spigot and told the homeless that they can use that, just stop breaking all the other meters because it's costing them no more in maintenance of the other ones than it is in losing water. And then this way also they can track how much water is actually being lost. So it's not several meters, it's one that he actually opened up to save the rest of the meters.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that we accept resolution number 2020-31, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing the temporary closure of certain roads to reduce illegal dumping and to protect the environment and the public health and welfare.
Second.
Motion is made by Councilwoman Overton and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Can I have a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Overton? Aye. Vice Mayor Sluten?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes. Move on now to, see, we're doing 12 after 14? Okay, so move on to item number 14. Public hearing to consider acceptance of the State Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, CDBG-CV, the amount of $122,279. Who's going to be presenting this? Okay, you don't look like Tina, but I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so as you're all aware, Congress did pass the CARES Act. There's been several different funding programs as a result of that. This is one of them that has been kind of in the works since the beginning, but now we're in the position to try and apply for the funds. So there was an allocation made for pretty much all communities. This particular program was allocated through CDBG, through the Department of Housing and Community Development. So this funding needs to be used for programs that comply with the normal CDBG guidelines. There's a description that is in the staff report about all that. But there also needs to be a tie-in to the COVID pandemic. And so this is the opportunity for the council and or the public to provide ideas through this public hearing on what that funding should be used for. And then the council can give direction on submitting an application. From a staff perspective, we have a recommendation that there's some improvements that are needed at the Senior Community Center. We've been working actually on some plans for a little while on improving the kitchen area there to making it a little more functional. One of the big problems that they have there is space for food storage, both dry storage as well as in the freezer and refrigerator. And we believe that, well, I'm sure all of you know that the Senior Center has been impacted and has been putting out a lot more meals through this time as folks have been at home. And I believe, you know, Councilmember Overton may want to provide some statistics on that, but just a lot more meals have been served than previous to this. And obviously that puts an additional strain on the ability to store food and be prepared. So we feel like that this project would be a perfect use of this funding. In addition, Cecilia Aguilar Curry was able to appropriate some state general fund dollars to be used at the Senior Center, just under $70,000. We've talked about this with the council before, and just actually today I think I received the final grant agreement from the state on that, and so we'd be able to take those dollars and leverage these dollars and hopefully really do a nice project at the community center. So that's the idea that we have, but of course the council will consider any other ideas you may have.
Thank you, City Manager Flora. Councilmember Overton, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I will. As he said, I think everybody knows the storage problems there. When we have the fires, it's just a nightmare. When people bring stuff, we get to the point where it's just everywhere in the whole building because we don't have a place to store it. So I think it's really essential for, we know we're going to have these evacuations. We know it's going to happen when we're going to have these PPEs, PG&E stuff's going to go. And since we're fixed as an emergency facility now, I really think it's essential that we really start working on the spaces there for storage. It's not adequate for just the senior center, let alone when we have the emergency situations. So as of now, it's been detrimental to the senior center because we haven't had the storage for us to order. When we can get deals, we can't really order them, so it's actually costing us more money to function when we can't secure the food when it's possible. So in general, I just think for the recovery of situations when we have fires and stuff, I think it's essential that we do this. So not just for the seniors, but really for the community.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Purdock.
First, I support the idea and will always back the senior center and our community center. I was just curious, Mr. Flora, is there any other items or considerations that you've had with this funding that you can share? Do we have an idea about how much? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Well, so we did do sort of a rough design to kind of do some space planning and figure out how it might work the best for the lowest cost. And so we have that done. Another thing kind of to try and focus the perhaps the other state funding on. Really like to see a irrigation system out there so that we have a nice lawn that makes the whole facility more attractive. So those two projects, the kitchen remodel and that type of thing, and then the irrigation, is currently estimated at right at 200,000. So between these two funding sources, should be right in the ballpark to get that done. I think there's still a small amount of Series A funding that was set aside for the senior center that we used some of it on kind of the sidewalk improvements and stuff like that last year, but I think there's a little bit left that maybe could go towards finishing this out as necessary. And then no one's directly approached me about additional proposals or anything for this funding.
Just to follow up, are we looking at expanding the existing structure, like changing the footprint or adding buildings?
No, it's just kind of reorganizing the space inside. You know, just an example, there's a few little alcoves there that aren't really used that much, and so the idea would be to kind of absorb those into the kitchen, and use the space a little more effectively. There's kind of multiple storage rooms all over the place. We would be eliminating some of them and combining them into a larger space. If I recall correctly, it's been a little while since I looked at that, but the one sort of meeting room or classroom space on the to the right of the kitchen, if you're looking at the doors, I think that would be mostly absorbed for dry storage space. And so, yeah, not expanding the exterior walls or anything, just kind of reworking and hopefully being a little smarter with the usage of the space that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Flora. Are there any other questions?
I think what Councilman Purdock asked was going to be my question, so you answered it. Thank you.
So you have no more there?
Nope.
Okay. All right, seeing no questions, I'll open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that have any comments on this subject? Madam Clerk, are there any? No public comments. Okay, seeing none then, I will bring it back to council for action.
I'm-
Pardon me?
The action would be to direct staff to submit an application for funding for a specific project.
Okay, I move that we direct staff to consider the acceptance of the State Community Development Block Grant for Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act in the amount of $122,279.
Motion has been made by Vice Mayor Sloden. We have a
Second.
second by Council Member Purdock. Madam Clerk, could we do a roll call?
Mr. Mayor, I just
Yes.
want to make sure that we're clear that you're proposing that we apply for the project that was discussed at the Senior Community Center, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Overton? Aye. Vice Mayor Sloon?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes. Now, we move back to item number 12. Subject to hear and act upon appeals of abatement orders in accordance with Clearlake Municipal Code, Chapter 18, Articles 9 and 10, and adopt Resolution Number 2020-32 and Resolution 2020-33. It's going to be presented by Mr. Lambert. And we have a book up here that you have each had an opportunity to look at.
So I already presented the evidence to you.
Yeah.
This is the city.
Okay, so the purpose of this meeting is for consideration of appeals of abatement orders. Consider and act upon any and all appeals of issued orders to abate. Upon consideration of the evidence and testimony, council may grant or deny the appeal and adopt a resolution confirming said decision. The first property, resolution number 2020-32, is located at 3722 Jefferson Avenue. This is the photos taken by the officer on the initial date. Those are hoop houses right there. Those were photos taken this morning. And there should be one more photo. The appellant is here, I believe. And Officer Copus is here as well if you have any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions? Councilmember Purdock.
Officer? Whoever's testifying. I think I see 3 hoop houses, and do we have an approximate plant count?
Inside, I'm not sure. It's definitely, I would assume at least 15 to each one, and then the rear and the back about 15, I would say there. I see this morning in the back.
So 15 in each?
I would say approximately 15 could fit in each, if not more.
15 plants?
Yes.
And each one plus 15 outside?
Yes.
For a total of about 50?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just
No,
asking.
yeah. About that.
Thank you, officer.
Any other questions? Open this up to public. I'm sorry, did you have questions? No. Open this up to public comment. Are there any public comments, Madam Clerk? Any sent in?
I haven't received comment on this item.
Seeing none, I'll bring this back to council for action. Pardon me? Is there a pellet here? Come on up, I'm sorry. State your name, sir, please.
Lonnie Anderson. There are no marijuana plants inside the hoop house. The hoop houses are used for storage. So, but there are marijuana plants back there. I did not apply for a permit because everything that's going on, I just didn't have the money to apply for the permit, and I didn't have the money for the fine, so that's why I'm here now. But there are no plants inside of the hoop houses.
Were you aware of the ordinance?
No, I was not aware. I mean, I was aware of the ordinance, but I didn't know that you had to pay to be able to have the 6 plants in the yard until after I received the notice.
And the fact that you couldn't have anything beyond a 10 by 10 foot square?
No, I didn't know that, sir.
Well, those are things that you should know.
Yes, I understand.
You have a question, Councilmember Purdock?
I was just curious, are you the owner of the property?
No, I'm just a resident of the property.
I'm sorry?
I'm just a resident of the property. I'm not the owner.
I understand that. So you're renting or leasing?
Yes, I'm renting.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the appellant? The plants are yours, not the owner's, huh?
Yes, sir. In 2009, I was diagnosed with cancer, so I used the medicine. I mean, I used the marijuana for medicine. I can't afford to go and spend a bunch of money at the dispensary, so therefore I grow my own medicine.
Do you think you need 50 plants?
It's not 50 plants, sir. There's no marijuana plants inside the hoop houses at all. It's just the plants outside. There's roughly about 15 or 16 plants back there.
You're disputing the numbers?
There's no plants inside the hoop house, no, at all, none. They're used for storage. I have ATVs, I have some wood and some miscellaneous things inside of those because it's watertight, but there are no marijuana plants inside of the hoop houses.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right, I'll bring this back to council.
Councilmember Overton has a
Councilmember Overton?
Okay, so, Mr. Lee, it doesn't matter how many plants, does it? It's just that there was no permit, is that correct?
Correct. The ordinance allows for 6 with the permit, so even if you deny the appeal tonight, he still has the ability to pay the fine, get a permit, and cultivate 6 plants.
Oh, okay, so he has more than 6 plants, he admitted that, so no matter what, he's past the threshold.
Yeah, he's over the threshold right now, yes.
He still has to put the containment area, the 100 square foot.
Correct, he'd have to comply to the entire ordinance.
All right,
Just one comment. I mean, everybody that grows needs to comply, and obviously this gentleman didn't, so. He even states that he was aware of the ordinance, so.
it leaves us with very little choice. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we hear, wait a second, to hear and act upon the appeals of abatement order, adopt resolution 2020-32. The location is 3722 Jefferson Avenue, Clearlake. Applicant is Lonnie Anderson.
I think part of the motion needs to say they're denying or.
Denying the
accepting
appeal, sorry.
Okay, a motion has been made, adopting resolution 2020-32, denying the appeal. Motion is made by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilmember Overton. Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Overton? Aye. Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
I take no pleasure in it, but aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the next one.
Yep.
Mr. Lambert?
So the second one, resolution number 2020-33, is 15409 Stanton Street. Here's the photo when an officer discovered the grow. And then here it is as of this morning. The appellant has cultivated or removed the marijuana. And I'd just like to note, this is an issue we have sometimes, is they'll just file the appeal and try and go through the appeal process if their plants are close. That way they can harvest it within the 2 weeks or so that it takes for us to schedule these. So he is in compliance now. So I don't know how you want to deny or approve I don't know what you want to do on the abatement order.
So
Yes, this has nothing to do with the administrative citations.
In other words, you should probably just pull this.
What's your recommendation, officer?
Sorry to jump in here, Council, but the department's recommendation is that you still provide an opportunity. They schedule the hearing. This is a time and place set for the hearing. The fact that they've decided not to show up or what they've done since, the issue is, was it in violation at that time? So the department would request that you hear or review the evidence before you, and our recommendation is that you do uphold it, deny the appeal, and determine that it did constitute a public nuisance. Thank you.
thank you, Chief.
I agree.
Okay, any other questions? Are there any public comments, Madam Clerk?
No public comment received.
Okay, I'll bring it back to council for action.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-33, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake denying the appeal of an abatement order at real property located at 15409 Stanton Street in accordance with Chapter 8, Article 9 and 10 of the Clearlake Municipal Code.
Second.
Motion has been made by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Madam Clerk, could you do the roll call?
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Overton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving on, I think, to item number 15. Discussion regarding a letter of intent to purchase a portion of the airport property located at 6356 Armijo Avenue and 6393 James Street in Clearlake. Mr. Flora?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So you're familiar with our intent to develop the airport property. Recently, we were approached by developer of hotels that, through our consultant retail strategies, that is interested in developing an airport or a hotel project at the site. We're still working on some details of what this deal would look like, but they have requested that we do a letter of intent as soon as possible because they're able to get an incentive from the nationally branded hotel chain that they're working with. And so this would provide a 6-month window for us to continue negotiations on the property, review their financing proposal, and work out the terms of a purchase and sale agreement, which we would bring back to the council for approval. And there is a map at the end of your packet. So these are two of the northernmost properties at the end of the runway at the former airport site. So I'd be happy to address any questions that the council may have regarding this.
Okay, Vice Mayor Slotin.
It looks like, is Spruce Street to be vacated? That portion between Victor and Warner?
Yes, we did add some language in the letter of intent that a portion of both Spruce Street and potentially James Street would be vacated to provide additional property for the development. I mean, that section of James Street that's parallel there to Old Highway 53, that's a pretty significant grade change from the top of the pad, but you know, the way that was subdivided originally is not useful for the type of development that we're looking for now. So that would be part of the thing that we may come back and ask the council to vacate a portion of those streets.
Because it looks like there's a residence on the other side of Amarillo.
Yes, there is, I think, one house right there. So the portion to the east of, on the other side of Armijo, you can see kind of the L-shaped property there. It's not outlined, but that's also a city-owned parcel. So they were asking for about 2 to 2.5 acres for this development. Between the two of these, it's more like 4 or 4.5.
Plus the street, so.
Depending on some of the elevation changes and things, they might be interested also in picking up this additional piece, but we think that these two might be enough for what they have in mind. It would be about I think about a 70 to 75 room hotel with a small conference center, swimming pool, etc.
So the 2.799 acres and the 1.26 acres does not include that what would have been Spruce Street, I guess, in between them, or does include, or is that part of the property that will be included?
No, that's just within the parcel boundary. So I think the 4 acres that was mentioned somewhere maybe in the LOI, that's based on space that may be used from vacating the streets as well.
Okay, so it might be slightly more than that when it's all said and done. Okay. Councilmember Purdock, any questions? Councilmember Overton, any questions?
No, sir.
One question from Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I see also that it's our responsibility to work with this particular developer to additional development at the airport, including but not limited to a truck stop or gas station?
So a lot of the projects that they do, they commonly have done a gas station or sort of a mid-size truck stop as part of the project as well. They're potentially interested in doing that. You know, one of the factors here is we just, you know, we're not familiar with working with them, and so we thought we would kind of start in trying to focus on the hotel project, but they are interested in doing other projects in the city, potentially including a gas station and maybe some other items as well.
Fine with it.
All right. Any other questions from council? Madam Clerk, are there any public comment? Well, anybody in the public have any comment? In the room have any comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring this back to council for action.
I move, no, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to authorize the city manager to sign the proposed letter of intent with King Management LLC and to purchase the portion of the airport property.
Recommendation's been made by Councilmember Overton. And seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Overton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sutton?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item number 16. Subject is discussion and direction regarding implementation of a residential rental housing registration and inspection program. City Manager Flora, do you want to lead, or Chief White? Or both?
Yeah, I'll introduce it, and then Chief White may want to join in at some point. You may have questions for him. So this was something that was talked about with the council some time back about developing a rental housing registration program. This was largely initiated due to the knowledge of some of the sort of dilapidated conditions of rental housing that were brought to the council through some code enforcement actions. One of the issues that we've had in kind of moving this project forward has been implementing the vacant commercial property ordinance and the many other responsibilities of code enforcement staff. Chief White and myself became aware of service through HDL, which the city currently contracts for our sales tax auditing services, that they have a complete program that's available through them that could handle the full process of registration all the way to handling the actual inspections. We talked with him a couple different times about what the fees would look like and so forth. We don't have any specific fees in the proposal that you're looking at tonight because there's a real high volume of rental properties in the city, so the scope of the work is pretty significant. And so we felt like it might be best to get some direction from the council on sort of which of these options, or they'll design the program however we want to do it. But we can kind of step through those options in just a second. But the idea would be, at least from staff perspective, that we contract with HEL to do the whole program, and then we already have an ordinance on the books. We may need to make a few tweaks to that in order to make it fit the program that you want to do. And then we'll add the fees directly into the fee schedule that are charged by HDL. And there should be no real cost to the city for this program other than the requirement for, some oversight of the consultant by staff. And so there's two main or three main models that were proposed. One would be to annually register every rental and annually inspect every rental. Model 2 would be the annual registration and initial inspection as the program starts, and then self-certification would be possible. They could certify that these things were done themselves, and then we could follow up on a sort of complaint basis on any issues. And then Model 3 would be annual registration and periodic inspection. HDL is proposing like a 3-year cycle, so each property would be inspected at least every 3rd year. And I believe that that's kind of the recommendation at this time that HDL had in sort of moving forward with the program. And then, of course, if there was some need to adjust it, we could do that. But the registration itself would happen through HDL's website. We wouldn't be involved with that. They would set up and coordinate all the inspections. Code enforcement of the police department would really just be involved if there was some compliance issues that they weren't able to address through their normal process. And so with that, that's a brief overview. I don't know if Chief White wants to add anything at this point, or hopefully not have to correct anything that I already mentioned.
Chief White?
Good evening again. I just wanted to add that, you know, when we've looked at this, that staffing is really a significant consideration. Obviously, with changes in the economy and looking at our budget outlook and everything else, we're really trying to find something that strikes a balance, that we don't have to take something on that we can't do well or can't do properly, realizing that this has impacts all the way around with landlords, tenants, you know, a diminished housing stock, et cetera. A couple of things to note just to add on is that in terms of this program is that if we do go with them, we do have flexibility. If for some reason the council or city decided to pull it back in-house, we would own all the data, which was an important piece that we talked with them about. So we can get access to all that. It's not going to be owned by them as proprietary. It's all of our data. So that's something important. The other part is that the program that they're proposing closely mirrors what we're doing on the vacant building side. And so I think that that's positive because we have some consistency in how the processes work. It's just that here they would obviously be taking on the inspection role, but also too is getting people on board to start doing their own self-inspections is another important factor that we talked about. And then just the last thing I'd add is that, you know, we've looked at different programs. We tried to see about how to outsource the vacant commercial thing, and it just wasn't viable. The place that does it in other areas just wasn't interested because our remote location, it's not a moneymaker for them, et cetera. But in this case, with HDL, they already have an existing relationship. They have staff that can come up here and respond timely to do these inspections. So from the police department perspective, and particularly code enforcement, you know, our recommendation is that you give this consideration and allow staff to move forward with looking into this further. And as the city manager mentioned, obviously we're gonna have to do some more work on the ordinance, but for right now, just to get a sense, is this something that you're interested in us pursuing? Thank you.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Purdock.
Well, thank you, Chief, for addressing the ordinance and the correction of the language, because that was a question I had. And also, thank you for bringing this forward. This has been a long time in coming, and I know that there's a lot of people that are renting in our city that are living in substandard housing, and I'm hopeful that this might address some of those issues. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Slotin, I'm sorry, Councilmember Overton had her.
So I'm looking at a couple. I'm looking at this last number 3 model. So I'm going to assume that all of these are going to have initial inspections. Is that how this is going to look? That initially they'll all be inspected, and then the self-certification will come and as it goes on?
Yeah, I mean, they're willing to design it however we want, but
Okay.
the 3 model, number 3 model, they would conduct an initial inspection of all of them, and then after that, it would go on a cycle.
And then could we have it that, because I see here down here, additionally, a self-certification would be valid by the tenant. So is there a way to put that when tenants change, let's say, you know, that each time a new tenant goes in there, they would have to sign off on the self-certification? Because, you know, some people stay 6 months, 7 months, and then, oh, you know, the landlord doesn't, something's broke or whatever, and then those people move out and they're just in a hurry to get somebody else back in there. So I'd like to make sure that when these properties change over, that there's, that the tenant would have to sign a paper stating that everything is in good order for their benefit and the landlords too.
Yeah,
They normally have a checklist they go off when they rent a place, so.
I don't know that was something we specifically talked with them about, but we could certainly do so.
Well, it's kind of here is you know, self-certification and validated by the tenant. All we need to add in there is for each time it is rent, you know, is vacated and re-rented. It would just have to have something added onto that.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
Yeah, good point. I think this is long overdue, so I've been talking to you about this for about 6 months now. So also, we're not on a comment trail, so this is just public hearing. So I'll hold some other comments later on.
Well, we've been working on this for 5 years. Trying to get
All right.
it
Now, this
This is a
order was
question
put into a
time.
long time ago.
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments? Could you read them, please?
We have one public comment that I've received via email from Henry Bornstein. He states, "I'm in favor of establishing a residential rental housing inspection program. For over 40 years, I was the landlord of a duplex in Berkeley, California, and have had a lot of experience with that city's various residential rental housing inspection programs. After trying various systems over the years, the Berkeley City Council eventually implemented a self-certification plan that was relatively inexpensive, not a big burden on the landlords, and seemed to work well. Each year, every landlord filled out and electronically submitted an inspection form, similar to the forms included in the HDL proposal. The form was required to be also given the tenants. There was a modest per-unit administrative fee that was charged each time the certification was submitted. At one time, this was about $12 a unit. There was an online system set up that allowed tenants to inform the city of failures to register, any problems with the rental, or any non-compliance with what was certified to be true. City inspections were only made if a tenant pointed out a problem. If the certification was found to be false, then that rental was subject to yearly inspections for a certain number of years, for which the landlord was charged a fee. I believe that Berkeley decided out that the program without inspections of all rentals worked as well as the programs that required each unit to be inspected, and caused a lot less hassle and stress on the part of the landlords, tenants, and the city inspectors. This system seemed to work fine and relied on educating both landlords and tenants about their obligations and rights, rather than having to inspect each rental unit in the city. I'm not sure inspections are necessary if the public and landlords are properly educated. This might save some money in this time of tight budgets."
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any other public comments? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Vice Mayor Slotin, you now have something to say?
Yes. Henry's Bornstein, will this be online through HDL? So people can self-certify online to this?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that you can self-certify, I think you would be able to do that through HTL's website, yeah.
I'm glad this is here, a long time coming. And I also want to mention that I've been talking to a local credit union that might be willing to set up what I would call microloans, that if there are landlords that need to upgrade some of their stuff, that they can apply for very low interest loans through a local credit union. So hopefully we'll be able to put that together when we finalize this ordinance.
Comments? Councilman Murdoch? Councilmember Overton?
So, okay, so I like that, and I really appreciate the input from our public. But I do like I do think there needs to be initial inspections, and then I don't mind the 3-year cycle with the self-certification. I would like, if we go through this, I'd like something that penalizes them if they self-certify and we find out that it's false. I think there needs to be high penalties for that. I don't think it needs to be a, $100 thing. I think it needs to be a high penalty so that they don't do that. If they know there's a problem, like I said, I do want to where the self-certification for the tenants is for each time it turns over, not just once a year, but each time it turns over. But I think the 3 seems to be where we can, to me, is initial inspections and then self-certifications. But if there's a complaint, then we automatically inspect. So I want that in there somewhere, that we know if there's a complaint. I see that at the end, could schedule, says could schedule and conduct. I want will schedule and conduct.
Okay.
Yes, it's been worked on for way many years that this has been wanted and in place, so.
Obviously, the consensus seems to be that we want to go forward. Are you looking for us to give you a 1, 2, or 3, or?
That would be great, and then we'll get a specific proposal from HDL and more detail on that model and bring it back, and then with recommended changes to the ordinance that would be consistent with that, so.
Okay. Vice Mayor, Vice Mayor Slotin, you seem to.
No, I'm just trying to
Also-
see which one I modeled.
Councilmember Overton, you were leaning towards Model 2, is that correct?
3 with some adjustments on.
I thought you were talking about self-certification.
Right, well, if you do 3, the initial inspection, that leads to self-certification, so, in the model. And then, so the initial inspections, but then after that, it would be self-certifying unless there's a complaint. Then, we can have some things like if there's one complaint, we find it is that they didn't follow through, then there would be penalties for falsely certifying themselves when they shouldn't have been. And that I want, every time a unit is turned over, whether it's 6 months, a year, or whatever, that each tenant that comes in signs the self-certification also.
Okay, so that is Model 2?
No, Model 3. Well,
Model 3
pretty much
is-
Model 3.
is
So
a 3-year
Model 1
cycle.
is, you just register every year, you get inspected every year.
Right.
Model 2, you register every year, you get inspected initially, and then you just self-certify, you get inspected if there's a complaint. Then Model 3 is kind of in between the two of them, where you register every year, you get an initial inspection, you self-certify until you're in the cycle to get inspected again, but there's a 3-year rotating schedule that everyone still gets inspected.
Okay, so if Model 3 is also self-certification from between 1 and 3, and at
Right.
3, you get,
I mean, they would set up a schedule, it would be staggered, so they didn't have to do them all in 1 year, but yeah.
okay, did Vice Mayor Slotin, or which way are we?
Either 2 or 3.
Looks like Chief White wants to add something too.
They're real
And
similar.
Councilmember Purdock? No, I'm sorry, Chief White?
I'm sorry, I meant to mention this earlier, but to help in your discussions, we do need to consider their initial estimate is over 3,000 properties. So in terms of how we schedule that and the intervals and stuff, we will have to kind of keep that in mind to make sure that we can do what we commit them to do and what's reasonable. The other thing too is mentioning about the turnover. One option, if you'd like, that we could look at with them, it would really ultimately tie into an ordinance, but we could require in the ordinance that, for example, they provide the tenant with information that if there's issues or whatever else, that they could, report the violation. So that way they're in the know, just like real estate disclosures.
Right.
Because I'm not sure exactly on the HDL side what the implications are in terms of registration costs if they had to process those self-certifications every single time. So those are some options we could look at, but just so you know, the scope that we're, just over 3,000 is what their estimate is. I think like 3,300. Thank you.
What would be your recommendation?
I think something between the 2 and the 3. The only concern with Model 2 is that after that initial inspection, it doesn't seem, if I read it right, that there's ever any follow-up inspection by them.
There's not, right.
Yeah, that it just stays perpetual. What I'm hearing the council talk about is that they want some sort of thing where every once in a while it's checked in, and maybe they mention in there like random samplings or whatever. So that might be an option that we could pursue to make sure that, it doesn't go 10 years without having somebody
Correct.
external to check. But I think Model 2 also strikes the balance that if people are compliant, that's what we ultimately want. We don't want an onerous system. It's to protect the tenants and the community.
Can we do an inspection and then and do the periodic inspections, but in 3 years, if we see that that they've complied every time, that we can then put them on a complaint-based inspection instead of having, that they just recertify, but you can either just drop in an inspection or a complaint-based inspection to where we're not having to go back out every time, but we have leave some kind of option in there for us to inspect.
Sure. I mean, I think we can ask them anything, and I think the important part is that as we gather all your feedback, we need to go back to them as the ones knowing like the practical implementation of this with the numbers of kind of how do we strike that balance. I can tell you that whatever we ultimately do, when we look at any ordinance change, it will make sure there's a lot of flexibility, because there could be other things that trigger why we need to require an inspection or whatnot. But I think the main thing is to educate everybody so that the tenants know that they have somebody that they can reach out to, i.e. in this case, HDL to trigger an inspection, code enforcement, et cetera.
I like making sure that that's kind of given to them when they rent a place. I like that.
Okay.
Yes.
And we need to put that in a resolution. I absolutely agree that needs to be in there. But I also don't want to, I mean, if we have a landlord that is really good and they take care of their properties and everything, and we know it's just a waste of our time to go inspect because they're having their people sign off on their certification, then, I mean, is there a reason why we would have to deliberately go inspect them because we've got them on a 3-year term? So I want that flexibility that if we know they're people that they do, and as long as they've given their people their information and they've had them sign off on the self-certification also, and we have a copy of that, then as long as that person's in there, they know that where they can file a complaint at. I don't think, some people stay in places for 10 years, you know? I mean, is it necessary for us to go inspect those places, so.
Thank you.
Member Purdock has a question.
No, not really. It's a fine line that we're walking when we have these ordinances. And we have some tenants that are scared to death of their landlord, and they've been terrorized by their landlord. With the housing shortage that we have in Lake County, if you find a place to live, I think you feel lucky to have it. And then the landlords are getting away with not doing a whole lot of maintenance. So thank you very much for bringing this. I also agree that if we have a good landlord, they shouldn't be penalized, a good property owner, by being inspected even every 3 years. If the property is maintained, they have pride in ownership, and it's a nice piece of property within our city limits, we need to support that and not inspect even every 3 years if we have that option. That's just my feeling. So I am leaning more toward Plan 3 or Plan C, whatever, as Councilmember Overton has stated. But our mission and our statement is we want a cleaner, safer place to live, and I think this is a key piece of our ordinances that's going to help us attain that. So thank you again very much for bringing this to us, and I support Plan C with the modifications recommended.
Thank you, Chief White. I think you've probably gotten your direction. We're all leaning more towards 2, probably more towards 3.
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, I think we have enough to work with, and we'll work on getting some details back. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Move on to item number 17, discussion and consideration of an agreement with Hindeleiter de Lamas and Associates, HDL, for tax and fee administration solutions, including short-term rental operations, management, and commercial hotel transient occupancy tax, TOT, administration services. Mr. Flora.
Yeah, so this is the same company. They provide a wide range of services. So this is a little bit different one, you know. So as the council knows, we collect TOT tax for the lodging establishments within our boundary, and then we also, through an agreement with the Lake County Tourism Improvement District, collect the assessment that they've established, and then we remit the assessment payments to them on a regular basis and keep 2% of that overall fee for our administration. This is the same with all the other jurisdictions, the other 2 jurisdictions in the county, Lakeport and the county itself. And so just, you know, always looking at ways that we can kind of focus our efforts on things that we feel like are a little bit more valuable instead of processing things like this. And one of the reasons actually that this initially came up as part of our tourism improvement board discussions was that there's been a lot of problems with the county treasurer's office processing. They're responsible for TOT and TID tax collection at the county level with timely payments, and lodging owners were complaining because they would pay their TOT payments, they wouldn't be deposited for 6 months or whatever. And so just trying to figure out some ways that maybe we could have a consistent approach to enforcement throughout the whole county and make sure that we have, you know, a timely and consistent administration of the whole program. And so we received a proposal from HDL. Initially, this was set up so that each of the 3 jurisdictions would enter into an agreement with HDL, and they would handle all of it. So no matter where you were, your lodging establishment, you would work through HDL's website and with their staff on submitting your payments to them, and then those payments would be sent out to each of the jurisdictions, both the 2 cities, the county, and the Tourism Improvement District. The county decided to continue handling the administration of their program in the treasurer's office, but both the city of Lakeport and staff here in Clearlake feel like that the proposal still has value to us. We think it has value to the TID, and it's a good move forward to us. So to give you a little bit of an idea on sort of the services that it would provide that we're not currently getting. So, you know, we don't have a lot of properties. We have 8 properties that would qualify as hotels. And so for a full range of services, we would pay $800 per year for each of those hotels, and they would handle all the payments, dealing with them if there's collection issues. They would deal with that. And then one thing that's really important is that fee includes audits every 3 years of each of those properties, which is not something that we currently do, and, you know, costs, I think, about $2,000 per property to do that each year. And then STRs, or short-term rentals, so our Airbnbs and other vacation rental properties, I think we have right at 8 now that have been at least reporting to us that they have room. So we had very few for a while, as the council may remember. Staff did some research probably a year and a half or so ago, identified some more. We sent letters to all of them that we found, and several of them came into compliance at that time and have been paying. But as you know, there's a lot of technology out there now, and they have access to a way that they do daily checking of all of the major platforms. And they would identify any vacation rentals that are operating within our boundary. And if they're not someone who's currently registered with the city and remitting TOT, then they would contact them and bring them into compliance. And so the way that would work is the ones that we have already identified and we're working with, we would just pay a small $15 a year fee, filing fee for those. But for ones that they discover, and this is similar to where our sales tax auditing works, is that if they discover a new Airbnb that's operating, they would keep 35% of the collections, whatever that was, for 1 year on that new property, and then we would get 100% of it. So it seems like kind of a high amount at first, but most of these places don't have a large volume, and still it's money that we wouldn't have identified anyway, so I feel like it's still a win-win for us. So you can see, based on the numbers that we have in the city, it would cost us about $6,400 a year to handle the hotels, about $3,500 a year for the STRs, and that's not really including a whole lot of new ones being identified, so there could be some revenue offset there, but there is the minimum payment. They want at least $3,445 for doing that search work, even if they don't identify a lot of new collections. So anyway, it would cost us less than $10,000 a year to sort of offload this responsibility and be able to focus on some other tasks within the office. And then about $1,500 of that would be paid by the TID from their collections under the existing agreement that we have. And looking at that, carving that up a couple of different ways, we feel like that would be still a fair amount for the work being done. And so I'll try to address any questions that council has about this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Are there questions?
One quick,
Mayor Slotin?
we have also some in our ordinance for short-term rentals that they have to comply with parking, noise, and all those things. What happens with that? Are we going to get involved in that too, or they will do that?
So under our current ordinance, zoning ordinance, we really don't have those restrictions. What you're thinking of is the new stuff that's in the zoning ordinance update that you participated in. I think the ad hoc committee on that. So that's actually going to be going to the Planning Commission later this month. But that portion of it, the land use piece, would still be handled by our Community Development Department rather than HDL.
Councilmember Purdock?
I pass, no more.
All right. Have any questions, Councilmember Overton?
No, I'm glad we're, I think this is probably a good idea for us to do.
No questions?
No, I have no questions.
Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments from send in? Okay. Are there any public comments in the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring this back to council for action.
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign the agreement with Hinterletter de Lamas Associates for tax and fee administrative services.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Overton?
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes.
Mayor Kramer?
Sir.
This is a little late in the meeting, but we have been told that the PEG TV live stream hasn't been working, and so we're thinking maybe take a short break and we could start our Zoom room up if there's folks out there that were wanting to tune in at least.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes to do it?
Sure.
All right, 5-minute break.